strikes, protests, walkouts, even nasty letters from the faculty to the administration. Ooh, scary letters from the faculty.
Mr. Harkin, can I speak to you?
Yeah, sure, what is it?
You know, for months you've been hinting that I was in line for that promotion.
And look how hard you've been working.
Yes, that's what's been happening in higher education, early 2023. So let's take a look at some of the mess and all the news that's hitting us with this update about higher education's problems and what it means for you, your career in higher education, how to make a living today, and how to have anything good to contribute to higher education's future.
Were you just lying to me?
Lying? No, Nick. Motivating.
The real question is, can we tell the difference between the smoke and the fire? And that's what we're going to try to do. Everything from Hamline University's handling or mishandling of an adjunct art history professor and the non-renewal of a contract to a local debate at UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago, where they just conducted a week-long strike. They're back now, but they had a strike. Over what? Over pay, over faculty, over the future of higher education. So let's take a look. Hi, I'm James Callahan, and this is the Do-Over Show, where we take that closer look, trying to discern the difference between smoke and fire, and figure out how we can do meaningful things and how we can build a meaningful career, at least the second time around. So, to get started, how about you smash the like button, because it really helps. So let's start local for me at the University of Illinois, Chicago, UIC, that just completed a 1 week long strike, second week into the spring semester, after years of negotiating everything from pay to student treatment. The faculty union finally said, enough, we're going on strike. And a week later, they said, enough, we got what we wanted. So now that they've returned to the classroom, the 800-member union will vote to ratify, it's expected, the contract negotiation of a new 4-year contract. So what are the details? What were they fighting over? What was so important? And what does it mean for higher ed everywhere? The first thing they fought over, of course, is money. And they got about a 5% increase. Now, they moved the lowest temporary adjunct faculty from $51,000 to about $60,000 in compensation, and they moved the tenured faculty from $61,000 to about $71,500. Oh, by the way, they also got a $2,500 lump sum gift to compensate for inflation. You know, inflation, 6, 7, 8, 9%. Real inflation closer to 15 to 20%. Have you seen the price of eggs lately? So they get to buy some eggs with that $2,500 bump. The next important thing they were negotiating is a due process protection especially for non-tenure faculty, contract workers. Now UIC has a union. UIC doesn't employ like other private schools, for example, do one person to teach 1 or 2 courses a semester. They offer annual contracts, but they're visiting temporary yearly contracts. And the renewal process and the evaluation process, well, that made it really uncertain that you couldn't know what you were going to be doing this year, next year, or the year after. So it created a process where basically the administration promised that they would be nicer in evaluating these contracts year by year in retention or non-retention policies. It was intended to make people feel better about the tenuous nature of people who don't have a tenured agreement with the university. But it really accomplished nothing more than sort of a feel-good and a promise from the administration. Because the actual retention and evaluation processes used by administrators in today's higher ed administration are never transparent. We never have full disclosure. They use statements like, well, we just don't think you fit, or we think you'd be better somewhere else, or you don't quite fit our future plans. All vague, all intended to disguise all types of discriminatory behavior under the guise of the culture of the university or fit. They also got a concession to anti-discrimination, anti-harassment policies. Now what that does is protects the faculty, all faculty, adjunct as well as tenured faculty, from administrators who just go after them and don't like them or want to cancel that teaching line in the program and trump up some reason in order to just dismiss them. Or a single complaint from a student, it also mitigates against that and it gives some protection. It doesn't protect them absolutely. What it does is slow it down so that there actually is some due process where the person gets to say, wait a minute, I didn't say that, or the student didn't understand it, or the administrator is just trying to cancel this department. Happens all the time. So there was this promise, again, that they would basically slow it down a little bit. Oh, and the final thing the UIC faculty got was a greater commitment to educational mental health resources for students on campus. Why? Well, because as I've said, I did a video on student health, you can check it out here, that the problem with the pandemic was not just the virus, it was also the policies, the arguing, the complaining, the political wrangling that we did over it, and how students suffered dramatically, not only from lockdowns and online learning, but from the social and political pressures that are still being exerted, especially in larger cities like Chicago and like on a faculty of UIC. And they're realizing that student well-being, mental health, has suffered tremendously. It's a price that we're just starting to calculate. And the faculty are smart enough here to make the university put money behind it so that they can actually give students access to mental health support and resources and counseling so that they can be more successful as students and also try to survive the tail end of what looks like to be the political fight over COVID policy. All right, so that's UIC. Here's a piece that came up recently in a search for, well, the student loan debate and what's going to happen to it. Now, you know, states are either fighting it or not fighting it, withdrawing their objections to the federal government and the president's plan for student loan forgiveness. Well, the interesting thing is that in the state of Georgia, there was a bill proposed called the Transcript Ransom Bill back in 22. Now, it's gone nowhere. It's stalled basically, waiting for the student loan bailout or forgiveness program to actually take effect. But the idea is that certain Georgia public and private universities were withholding disclosing student transcripts. So if you wanted to get a job and show that you earned a degree or you had coursework in an area, or you wanted to transfer from one school to another, but you had an outstanding balance with the bursar, they would withhold your transcripts, which means that the university basically owns you. So the ransom that they're looking for is a forgiveness of it or to prohibit schools from doing this. Now, as I said, it went nowhere, but that is an interesting fight in higher education today about how the school can use its leverage with transcripts that you want to use for something else, somewhere else, even another school, maybe a competitive school. And you want to use them, but you have an outstanding bill, and the school says, nope, you don't get this until you pay that. That's interesting. And there's a dust-up at Western Virginia University when the administration proposed a plan, a revamping of their hiring and retention and tenure and post-tenure review policies. They hadn't updated it since 2014, 2015, so it was time, they thought, and they released a plan, and the faculty absolutely went bonkers. That is, they said, no, heck no, you cannot do this. Here are some of the details of what they proposed and what got the faculty so upset. The first version of it suggested that faculty with an unsatisfactory rating in 2 areas in 1 year, 1 teaching year, would be recommended for non-continuation of employment. You see, that's what the real world calls fired. And they objected, but here's the interesting thing. It's the way the policy changes were wrapped up like a nice present by the administration in order to say that they wanted to address giving credit for other than traditionally academic measures for tenure and retention and promotion. They wanted to add things in that weren't currently included. In particular, the administration said they were going to focus on diversity, equality, inclusion, and their social justice culture. So wrapped up in the social justice packaging, the administration created easier and vaguer justifications for their power to dismiss faculty. The administration started with this and then pulled it back. And they said, it's sort of like they said, we're going to do something really bad, but then they decided not to do it. And then they said, give us credit for being really nice. Well, here's what they said. Faculty members must engage in behaviors consistent with the university's code of conduct and university values. That's not vague at all, right? Well, here's the values, the way they specified those. You're supposed to be an ambassador of Western Virginia University and avoid conflict that reflects adversely on the image of the university, and respect the decisions that have been made in the best interest of the university by the administration. That is, you will not complain, you will comply. And the promise is they will enforce their own policies, and if you choose to disagree, that would become a reason for non-continuation of employment. Now, the faculty objected, but they didn't object to everything being wrapped up like a nice package in DEI and social justice. No, they have to cry, academic freedom has been violated. What they did get right is that this is simply another way of fast-tracking the termination or non-continuation of non-tenured and tenured faculty. And of course, what do? Well, they respond to a survey and they write letters, and of the 2,700 faculty, a majority objected to this policy rollout and its different versions. And of course, they submitted it, and it's not binding. It's just like an opinion survey. It's like when you're in a meeting and someone conducts a survey. Let's have a discussion. What do you think of that? They've already made up their mind what they're going to do. They just want you to be tricked or fooled into thinking that you had a voice in this. Don't you feel better that you had a voice, even though they had already figured out what they were going to do beforehand? Yeah, that's what they did. It's non-binding. You know why? Because trustees run the program at our colleges and universities. It's the legal structure, it's the practical structure, it's how universities and colleges are structured. The sooner we can wrap our minds around this, that the trustees are not bound by any influence, not even the faculty, the sooner we'll be off to a better understanding of the real role of higher education today. And our last update is another step in the drama that's happening at Hamline University up in Minnesota. After an art history instructor, an adjunct, was not invited back for an agreed upon course for the spring, the university administration said the adjunct contract was not renewed, and now the university and others have rallied around, and it's made Hamline University a national joke. This small 1,800 student university has now become the focal point of all things academic freedom and all the problems. And again, I've done a video on that, and there's a lot more to it than just one little fight, but you can check that video out here. So what's happening? The faculty at Hamline University wrote another letter. They wrote a letter to the trustees, to the administrators, and they said, we don't have confidence in our president that this person will be able to see us through this mess. Interestingly, the first black president of Hamline University in its history, we don't think that this person is going to be able to handle. It's basically a vote of no confidence. Now again, a letter, non-binding, and we'll see what happens. But here's the interesting thing. A president unilaterally dismisses an adjunct. Usually there are no consequences. Happens all the time. But the interesting twist is, if this works out the way the faculty and others are pushing, and the outside pressure is pushing against Hamline University and the trustees, it could mean for the first time that a president who fired an adjunct gets dismissed themselves because they fired an adjunct. So where are higher education's problems and where are the news stories heading? Well, here are the details. Budgets for faculty and hiring and retention are being cut across colleges and universities each year. This year, the greatest reduction in relative compensation for faculty development, faculty retention ever. That is the ratio of what they pay for their buildings, the Airbnb, the health club, the athletic programs, and what they compensate faculty. The ratio has never been wider. So there's that. There's also new changes in policy that our administrators and trustees are taking back the power that they gave to faculty, tenured faculty in particular, by implementing post-tenure review and new termination policies or non-retention or non-continuation policies. And also, there is a concerted effort that's taking place on college and university campuses that anytime faculty, adjuncts, grad students try to form a union, usually under someone coming in from SEIU to bring this about, they are immediately squashed. And private schools, even religious schools, with an ethical bias to their morals, their values, their mission statement, that they are a religious institution motivated by their own religious morality, those schools continue to dismiss faculty efforts and disband existing faculty unions on their campuses. So much for their own moral principles. So let me hear from you. What are you seeing in your circles in higher education? What do we need to talk about? What do we each need to know about this? So drop it in the comments and let's begin to have this conversation. And thanks for being part of the Do-Over Show. Please, while you're here, could you tap the like button because it really helps. And while you're down there, consider subscribing, ringing the notifications bell so you don't miss the next episode. I'm so glad you found me and I found you. Thanks.